Hello and welcome to TVC News. I am Oluyemisi Dada. The top stories. Somali authorities arrest 5 Al-Shabaab militants in Mogadishu. Number of refugees and internally displaced people worldwide hits record high. Investigators commence analysis of voice and flight data recorders of Egypt Air MS-804. Somali terror group Al-Shabaab have finally confirmed the death of one of its commanders, Mohammed Mohamud Ali, also called Duyadin. He is widely believed to be the mastermind behind the deadly attack on Garissa University in Kenya. The group, after a long silence since the death was reported by Somali authorities early this month, finally released an obituary confirming the death and referring to Duyadin as a martyr who was slain by U.S. crusader. According to Somali officials, Ali died in a Somali Special Force raid close to the southern port town of Kismayo. Mahmoud Ali is a Kenyan national and ethnic Somali. He was reportedly killed along with 3 other commanders, following which his body was later put on display by local authorities. At least 5 Al-Shabaab militants were captured in a security operation by National Intelligence and Security Agency NISA in the north of Mogadishu. Abdikamil Shukri from the Ministry of Internal Security spokesman says the security forces had targeted the militants during the operation conducted on Saturday night. He added that the security forces also foiled a terrorist bomb attack in which the militants were earlier involved. The Somali security forces, backed by the Africa Union mission in Somalia, have increased operations to flush out insurgents from the restive Mogadishu and its environs. The Islamic State group tried to break a siege on their last holdouts in Sirte, but were pushed back by fighters allied to Libya's unity government. ISIS fighters have been pinned down in part of Sirte since forces allied to the UN-backed government of National Accord launched an operation to dislodge them from the coastal city last month. Pro-GNA forces on Sunday said they clashed with the jihadists who had launched a bid to break away from positions west of Sirte using medium-sized weapons. The Speaker of Libya's Eastern Parliament has declared martial law in areas under its control. The move was intended to empower its military to respond quickly to infiltration by militias loyal to the rival UN-brokered government in the capital, Tripoli. Parliament Speaker Aguila Saleh's declaration on Sunday places the military on high alert and expands its powers. The measure reflects the Eastern administration's consternation as it comes under growing pressure by the international community to recognize the Tripoli-based National Unity Government. 6 people, including 2 Al Jazeera employees, have been sentenced to death after being accused of leaking Egypt's state secrets to Qatar and the Doha-based TV network during the rule of toppled President Mohamed Morsi. The 2 Al Jazeera employees, identified by the judge as news producer Ala Omar Mohamed Sablan and news editor Ibrahim Mohamed Hilal, were sentenced to death in absentia. Amnesty International called for the death sentences to be immediately thrown out and for the ludicrous charges against the journalist dropped. A journalist, Wali Fatade, said Egypt is a farce.
As of December last year, the Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, actually rated Egypt as the second worst country to practice journalism after China. I mean, it's just part of what Egypt has been to journalists. It's a dangerous place now, perhaps after China and Somalia, because of Al-Shabaab. I don't think there's another dangerous place to practice journalism now. And you know, I think we need to look at the international diplomacy angle to it too. The current or the former Egyptian president was actually close to Qatar. And you know, Qatar is the one that set up Al Jazeera. They are the one funding it. And part of the accusation now is that they were passing state secrets down to their network and by extension, Qatar. And so the current president, LCC, he has broken ties, as it were, with Qatar. So they are not as close. So we need to look at that dimension. And I think it's a way of getting back at Qatar. And unfortunately, like in so many of these cases, journalists have been caught in the middle.
Another phase in the investigation of the crash of Egyptair MS-804 is in full swing with the analysis of the plane's black box by Egypt's Aircraft Accident Investigation Committee. Representatives from France and the United States are expected to be present. Both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder were extracted from the devices and dried in a military facility for 8 hours. The committee is now conducting electrical tests on both memory units, which is a step before the start of data extraction. The United Nations Refugee Agency says persecution and conflict around the world has raised the total number of refugees and internally displaced people worldwide to a record 65.3 million in 2015. The previous year, 2014, had already seen the highest number of refugees worldwide since World War II, with 60 million people displaced. Last year, Lebanon, Turkey and European countries staggered under the arrival of large numbers of refugees. Almost 1 million internally displaced persons fleeing conflict in the Central African Republic are still unable to return home. Half of them live outside the country, but the rest wait on the IDP camps, often just kilometers away from their real homes. The non-government organization Oxfam is worried about a drop in funding and its impact on resources.
There's a need to accompany people home or to alternative places, but also we need to continue to help those who haven't left the site because I don't think that the conditions allow for it. And this is a message we need to send to funders and to other actors because there is almost no more assistance in the IDP camps. It is rather a problem for these people.
It's true that there have been changes at a political level which gives hopes for stabilization, but it is important to remember that the humanitarian needs continue where there is a high concentration of people like these IDP camps. Today, there are 418,000 people who are displaced throughout the country in 106 sites. It is crucial today to look after these people. Access to water is being talked about, but we could also talk about run-down shelters. It's been a year that these shelters have been redone.
June the 20th is a date set aside by the United Nations as World Refugee Day. In a world where violence forces hundreds of families to flee each day, the UN Refugee Agency believes now is a time to show world leaders that the global public stands with refugees. A petition to all governments has been launched called #WithRefugees to send a message that they must work together and do their fair share for refugees. The so-called Boko Haram terror group has struck again in Niger, killing 7 police officers. According to Niger's Interior Minister Mohamed Bazoum, the terrorists attacked the village of Ngagam over the weekend, arriving in vehicles and opened fire on the police officers in the village. The village is located in an area where many refugees live. The Interior Minister had visited the village, located some 40 kilometers from the town of Difa, with a delegation just a few hours before the attack. This new attack comes as Niger's Defense Minister Hassoumi Massaoudou called for a rethink in the strategies used in dealing with Boko Haram after it claimed responsibility for the deaths of 7 soldiers at a military barrack in Difa on Thursday. Niger's authorities have denied rumors of any deployment of Chadian troops in its southeastern region of Difa. News about the deployment went viral after the militant Islamist group Boko Haram carried out a deadly attack in Niger 2 weeks ago. Following the attack, several military sources said Chad had sent 2,000 troops to Niger to prepare a counterattack against the militants, a report which has since been debunked by the Nigerian authorities. In Mozambique's central Nampasa region, coaches, lorries and cars stand idle on the country's main highway, waiting for a military convoy to escort them safely north. This is the new norm in a country where clashes between the National Army and Renamo, an armed insurgent group, and the elected opposition party have intensified, reviving the spectre of a civil war that ended more than 20 years ago. Vivian Adibamowa further describes the situation there.
This is the center of Mozambique, where coaches, lorries and cars queue up to be escorted by the Army of National One, the main road that runs from the north to the south of the country. Residents these days spend hours waiting to travel just 100 kilometers, and this is as a result of clashes between the army and Renamo, which is the rebel group during Mozambique's civil war.
This situation is stressful. Nothing is going right. Before this military situation, we could do the journey in one day. We would leave at 4 a.m. and arrive at around 11 in the evening or very early the next day.
It now takes 3 or 4 days to get from the capital Maputo to Nampula, which is 2,000 kilometers north.
We drove past the armed forces. 500 meters further up the road, the Renamo men appeared. They fired shots. They were in the bushes and they came out and shot at me and at the driver. Thanks to God, they didn't get me this time. I'm still here.
When the army put its military convoy in place last February, Renamo got themselves into position to attack vehicles they suspected to be transporting soldiers or arms. Within a few months, several civilians have been killed and dozens injured. This coach was attacked a few weeks ago.
We've suffered big losses due to being held up. For example, I transport live chickens, and if they stay here for too long, they die because of the temperature.
The army's support isn't enough to reassure travelers, and the economy is counting the cost. The loss of produce and the cost of transport is already having an impact on food prices. At the end of May, the government and Renamo agreed to reopen peace negotiations, but since then, the attacks have intensified. Vivian Adibamowo, TVC News.
TVC News will return with more stories in a moment. Stay with us.